Is Iran facing a renewed Baloch insurgency? The country's brief but intense conflict with Israel in 2025 may not have led to regime collapse or even territorial loss, but it has left the Islamic Republic facing internal instability. As widespread opposition to the regime continues, long-standing grievances amongst Iran's ethnic minorities have come to the surface. Amongst the most volatile of these is Iran's southeastern Baloch region, where escalating communal anger has raised fears of renewed conflict. So, what exactly lies behind this threat, and why could it be rising again? Hello and welcome, I'm James Ker-Lindsay, and here I take an informed look at international relations, conflict and security. History has repeatedly shown that regimes are at their most vulnerable not during wars, but immediately after them. Conflict not only places enormous strain on state institutions, but also drains resources and exposes weaknesses. As a result, countries often face mounting internal opposition when fighting against an external enemy ends. To address this threat, governments typically attempt to restore their authority by cracking down on groups considered disloyal or unruly. However, while this may initially suppress opposition, it can lead to increased long-term instability. Iran is a notable example. Although the Islamic Republic has emerged from its 2025 confrontation with Israel relatively intact, the conflict has nevertheless revealed vulnerabilities. But as repression grows nationally, could the country's Baloch region become a key flashpoint for future tension? Stretching from the Caucasus and the Caspian Sea in the north to the Persian Gulf and Arabian Sea in the south, the Islamic Republic of Iran occupies a vital strategic location connecting the Middle East, South Asia and Central Asia. However, its 90 million inhabitants are ethnically and religiously diverse. While Persians form the majority, other significant groups include Azeris, Kurds, Arabs, Turkmen and the Baloch. While estimates suggest that 2 to 3 million Baloch live in Iran, making them one of the country's smaller minorities, they're highly concentrated in the country's southeast province of Sistan and Baluchestan, a vast but sparsely populated region that borders Pakistan and Afghanistan. Significantly, while they maintain strong links to Baloch communities across the border, they differ from the Persian majority. In addition to speaking Baloch as their first language, most are Sunni Muslims rather than the Shia that dominate elsewhere in the country. Economically, they also lag behind the rest of Iran. By most measures, Sistan and Baluchestan is Iran's poorest province, suffering from high unemployment, limited infrastructure, water scarcity and underdeveloped access to healthcare and education. And it's all this that lies at the heart of the problem. Traditionally semi-nomadic, the Baloch historically occupied a large region known as Balochistan, an area covering what is now southeast Iran, southwest Pakistan and southern Afghanistan. Often lying on the edges of empires, local leaders usually enjoyed significant autonomy with limited control from imperial powers. However, all this began to change in the 19th century. As British colonial rule in India extended northwards, a large part of the Baloch territory came under its control. Meanwhile, the remaining areas were absorbed by Iran, then known as Persia and Afghanistan. This lasted until 1947. As Britain decolonised, India was partitioned and British Balochistan became part of the new state of Pakistan. As a result, the Baloch were now divided across 3 different countries, none of which acknowledged, let alone accepted, their political wishes or economic needs. This, in turn, meant that Baloch nationalism didn't develop as a unified independence movement. Instead, it emerged as a series of separate regional struggles, usually shaped by the local conditions in their respective countries. While in Pakistan, this led to repeated serious armed uprisings, in Iran, resistance took a somewhat different form. Within Iran, the Baloch have long been economically and politically marginalised. Under the Pahlavi monarchy, which ruled Iran from the early 20th century onwards, Baloch identity was primarily viewed as a security issue. Fearing separatism and foreign influence along the border, the government tried to centralise authority and suppress tribal autonomy. Meanwhile, as development lagged behind other regions and political participation remained highly limited, this would lead to occasional rebellions. But while the 1979 Islamic Revolution, which overthrew the monarchy, initially raised hopes amongst many Iranian minorities that they'd now enjoy greater inclusion, this optimism was misplaced. The new regime's emphasis on Shiite political theology quickly placed Sunni minorities, such as the Baloch, at a disadvantage. Instead, this new religious discrimination, coupled with continued economic neglect and strict security policies, just served to deepen resentment. As a result, over the past 4 decades, this resentment has occasionally erupted into violence and led to the formation of various small militant insurgent groups. While some of these were framed in nationalist terms and others took a more religious outlook, the most prominent was the People's Resistance Movement of Iran, otherwise known as Jundallah. Founded in 2003, it carried out numerous attacks against Iranian security forces before eventually being eliminated in 2010 when its leader was captured and executed. Since then, various other groups have emerged. While one, Jaish al-Adl, seems to have built a following, most have often proved to be rather weak. Aside from problems of factionalism, they've frequently been very localised. On top of this, the Iranian intelligence services have proven to be adept at infiltrating these groups. But while these movements have never posed a substantial, let alone critical threat to the regime, they have nevertheless ensured that Sistan and Baluchestan has remained one of Iran's most militarised provinces, with frequent checkpoints, raids and arrests. Meanwhile, as suspected militants have often been killed, executed or disappeared without judicial process, communities have often faced reprisal attacks. But while the Iranian government has tended to focus on meeting the security challenge, it has in fact also tried various economic programs to tackle poverty and improve economic development. The problem is that these have rarely brought about tangible results. Corruption, mismanagement and a continuing focus on security have all undermined the initiatives. I hope you're finding this useful. If so, please consider giving it a like and perhaps subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. It all really helps. Many thanks, and now back to the video. This focus on repression meant that by the early 2020s, the situation in Iran's Baloch region had seemingly been contained, while occasional flashes of violence emerged, such as protests that led to over 110 deaths in September and October 2022, and another bout of violence in 2024 that led to tensions with neighbouring Pakistan. Amidst heavy repression, the insurgency has seemingly become a persistent but relatively low-level threat. But this could now all be about to change. The aftermath of the 2025 Iran-Israel war appears to be pushing Iran as a whole, and this fragile situation in particular, in a new direction. Faced with growing discontent after the conflict, Tehran has tightened internal security across the country, leading to widespread repression and increasing numbers of executions. And along with the rest of the country, the security situation in Sistan and Baluchestan appears to be becoming ever more tense. But despite this crackdown, there are signs that Baloch discontent is not only gaining in strength, but it is also becoming ever more cohesive. Coming just days after an attack on security forces killed several soldiers, a video message released by the militant group Jaish al-Adl claimed the formation of a new umbrella organisation, the Popular Resistance Front, to take on the Iranian clerics in what they called the tyranny of the Islamic Republic. But what was also noticeable was that this didn't seem to be merely framed in terms of a narrow Baloch battle against the state, but rather as part of a wider nationwide opposition to the regime. And while the movement said that it would prioritise civil action, it was noticeable that it didn't renounce violence. So, does this increasing unrest in Iran's Baloch region pose a serious threat to the regime? In the short term, it appears highly unlikely, at least not in a traditional military sense. as the Iranian state maintains a dominant security advantage and is willing to use overwhelming force, a full-scale separatist uprising remains unlikely, at least for now. Instead, the greater danger may lie in long-term instability. The persistent low-level intensity conflict is steadily deepening the population's alienation and eroding state legitimacy. By responding to the current post-war insecurity with further repression rather than inclusion, Tehran is merely repeating a familiar pattern of suppressing unrest while intensifying its underlying causes. And in doing so, the regime may be planting the seeds of future conflict, not only in Sistan and Baluchestan, but across a diverse and restless society. Moreover, the fact that the new movement seems to want to work with others across the country is also a significant sign. In this sense, what we're seeing in Iran's southeast may not determine the fate of the Islamic Republic. However, as part of a wider trend, it clearly adds to the more serious overall threats facing the regime. Moreover, it also offers a revealing window into how states emerging from conflict can unintentionally make themselves less secure rather than more. I hope you found that useful. If so, here are some more videos that you might find helpful. Thanks so much, and see you in the next video.